The Miami Dolphins just wrapped up their trip to Chicago, and the good news is they didn't lose. But the bad news is they didn't win.
You are Locked On Dolphins, your daily Miami Dolphins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Miami, welcome to another episode of Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day here on the Locked On Network. I'm your host, Kyle Krabs, a lifelong Miami Dolphins fan, host of Locked On Dolphins, co-host of Locked On NFL Scouting, author of Touchdown Miami on Substack, and NFL staff writer for A to Z Sports. Want to give a special welcome and shout out to our everydayers because it is your team every day. We don't just say it. We live it here on the Locked On Network. Today's episode of Locked On Dolphins is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Locked On NFL for $20 off of your first purchase. Preseason game number 1, it's in the books. And the Miami Dolphins have tied the Chicago Bears, yuck, hate ties, by a final score of 24-24. And I think the first chapter of this game showcased some familiar frustrations. There was the goal line stand on the opening possession. The Dolphins starters on offense, and you don't have Tyreek Hill and you don't have Jalen Waddle, but they have some explosives. You have a chunk play that's offset by a procedural issue because Larry Borum's not lined up on the line of scrimmage. It's a point of frustration. It's an easily adjustable thing, right? And it's the backup swing tackle. Austin Jackson's not in. So you don't go too crazy over it, but man, it's the kind of stuff that just drives you nuts because it's the kind of stuff that has been littered as easily avoidable issues in a lot of places throughout kind of the Dolphins' offensive chapters. And then they get down to the 1-yard line and they're knocking on the door. And look, I like the attitude. We're going to mash this ball in here, right? But the only problem with that is they didn't. And you had one play where there was a missed execution, what looked like Jonah Savaianaya down on the goal line. And then there was another run where Jalen Wright stops his feet and it kind of kills his momentum. And then there's another one where it looks like Patrick Paul blocks down and Pharaoh Brown's not on the same page and he blocks out, and it opens up this gap for this second level player on fourth down to come screaming through and make a tackle, and you lose yardage on fourth down. So it's kind of the short yardage woes popped up. So some familiar things that showed up for Miami throughout the course of this preseason matchup against the Bears. But I thought the way that they moved the ball was really promising. I think, especially you consider the chemistry with Malik Washington. You get into some gotta have it situations, and Tua's looking for Malik Washington. The chemistry between those two as a second-year player, I think, is really important. We got some outbreaking patterns to help win to the sideline on throws. Those are the little things that I think you look for and you thirst for, just to add a few more tabs, if you will, to the play sheet for when you get into gotta have it situations. Now, it was a brief cameo appearance for Tua Tagovailoa. We had some of the touch pass stuff, the shallow air yards. He went 5 for 6 in this game. Zach Wilson comes in and gets an explosive play for Nick Westbrook-Ikhine. Kind of felt bad for Zach on one hand because Zach had Jermaine Ifedi blocking for him at right tackle. And you need to be able to watch the full film to get the full list, if you will, of who did well, who didn't on a play-in and play-out basis. But the domino effect of Larry Borum now being the starting right tackle because Austin Jackson's on ice until the start of the regular season, and then Andrew Myers missing time and Liam Eichenberg's missing time, and it leads to Jermaine Ifedi, who just signed here, is getting early playing time. I thought Pat Paul looked pretty sturdy, but then the drop-off when Keon Smith now has to play guard and would ideally be a tackle, and Larry Borum's up with the ones because Austin's now playing, the trickle-down effect, a lot of those concerns that you had throughout camp with the daily practice reports from those that were in attendance about, hey, this offensive line's not looking super sturdy. I think your backups are kind of dispersed right now across the depth chart. And maybe some of them aren't playing in their ideal spot. And you saw this where Jermaine Ifedi's got to come in and conceding a lot of pressure. So Zach finishes 5 of 996. He gets the explosive play to Nick Westbrook-Akine on the catch and run down the field, but he sacked 4 times. And it looked like there was not a lot of consistent width of the pocket. And both of these backup quarterbacks, Zach Wilson and Quinn Ewers, they both look to get off of their spot, but their feel of throws as they're uncovering while getting off your spot and trying to throw with accuracy. You saw it a ton with Ewers, right? Like, he didn't necessarily panic in the face of pressure, but he was looking and eager at times to get off his spot and look to move. And you're just not on the same page and it's not synced up. And I think that contrast in style of play kind of bit the Dolphins, especially as you get deeper into the wide receiver depth chart and you already didn't have your top 2 guys in this game. But Devon Achane ran strong in this game, I thought. We're going to get into Tahj Washington. I thought the entire first-team defense, obviously I think Chicago had 8 yards of offense in the first half through 2 possessions. Caleb Williams didn't start. The Bears didn't play a lot of their starters. That's what you would want it to look like. So I think from that standpoint, you acknowledge that Jalen Phillips doesn't dress, but everybody else is kind of rocking and rolling. And it looks the way that it needs to look for your expectation of who Chicago played and who you played to go out there and feel good about, hey, we executed. And then from an injury standpoint, the guys that are higher up on the depth chart on the defensive side of the ball, Elijah Campbell looked like he kind of grabbed above the knee. But that's one where he's in there running for that third safety spot, which makes obviously Ife Melifonwu returning off of the PUP that much more, or the non-football injury list, that much more important for you. But by and large, it looks like you avoided some of the chaotic opportunities that can come when you get in these preseason games and you have guys that go down. So Dolphin starters getting some run on both sides. Some guys like Jonah Savaiinaea played over 30 snaps in this game. And I think for a guy like that, as a second-round rookie, those are healthy opportunities, right? So I want to get into some of the young standouts that I have on my notes and my sheet, just off the TV copy. And then obviously we're going to go back and watch the tape and make sure we say things with a lot of confidence. So a lot of this obviously off the TV copy. I don't know if you guys watched the Bears broadcast on NFL Network. I hope you felt my pain if you did, because I about gouged my eardrums out trying to listen to the Chicago broadcast call this game. But that's neither here nor there. We're going to get into some of the young standouts in Miami's 24-24 tie against the Chicago Bears next. Make sure you guys stick with us. Today's episode of Locked On Dolphins is presented by Yahoo Fantasy. It is the best time of year. NFL kickoff is almost here, and that means fantasy football season is back in full swing. This year, Yahoo Fantasy is turning things up with a fantasy football experience like never before. Locked On Dolphins is playing this year on Yahoo Fantasy, and you should too, whether you're a first-timer or a veteran making your millionth league. To celebrate 28 years of fantasy football greatness, Yahoo Fantasy is dropping 28 big new features across 28 days in the month of August. To kick it off, they dropped Yahoo Fantasy Guillotine Leagues, a killer new way to play Yahoo Fantasy, where the lowest scoring team each week gets eliminated until there is just one team left. With a new season around the corner, it's now time to get your league together and give this new mode a try. Or if you're more into the classics, you can still play head-to-head private leagues or join a public league. Stay tuned for more killer announcements and start playing Yahoo Fantasy Football now at yahoofantasy.com/lockedonnfl. Look at the depth chart up here. Tahj Washington, I think we got to start here. And it wasn't just the route running, right? Because you get into, Chicago, and they press the receivers at joint practice, and they're getting real physical, and we thought they were thudding up, and this, that, the other thing. The primary concern that I had with all the reports from the joint practice was Jalen Waddle missed a team period because he got the wind knocked out of him because Tyreek Stevenson blew him up. And Tyreek Hill did not practice. So you've got Malik Washington, Eric Ezukama, Nick Westbrook-Akine, D. Eskridge, Tahj Washington, Theo Weiss, Andrew Armstrong, Monterey Baldwin, A.J. Henning, Tariq Black. These are the receivers that are participating when Jalen Waddle gets the wind knocked out of him for the period on Friday. When teams choose to play you physical and they choose to bracket 10 and 17, who's the winner? Who's the route winner? And I think Malik Washington has an opportunity to be a good all-purpose receiver, but I don't think he's twitched in the way that Tahj Washington is. And this is the first sampling we've got of Tahj Washington, right? He was hurt. He missed all year last year as a late round draft pick. It's a 7th round rookie in 2024. But my goodness, just the short area start stop ability, the lateral quickness, looked like he kind of fought the ball a little bit on that 3rd down conversion with the ones. But that's neither here nor there. There was good opportunities in the open field or making guys miss. I thought it was a great showcase for Tahj Washington as you're in that battle for wide receiver 5, wide receiver 6. How many wide receivers do the Dolphins keep? It's a big question, right? Because you got 10 and 17. You got Malik Washington. You got Nick Westbrook-Kine. That's 4. D. Eskridge has some special teams appeal, but so does Malik Washington. So maybe you can get off of that fence if you're stuck on it. Eric Azukama, is the light bulb finally going to come on here after being drafted in the 4th round in 2022? One of the UDFAs. If not, do you just keep 5? They kept 4 at 53-man roster cutdowns last year. And then they obviously claimed Grant Dubose off waivers looking for a physical player. Tahj Washington, man, you play like this all preseason, you're going to have a chance to be undeniable for one of those roster spots. I think that's a great development for Miami. Ollie Gordon, you'd be remiss to not mention him pretty early on the offensive side of the football as well. He obviously goes up and over the top for the big touchdown, a short yardage conversion. I'm just saying it was cool to have a guy get in from 1 yard out and not have it be pulling teeth. Was the consistency of the vision always where you wanted it to be? No, but spins out of contact on the first run, has a 21-yarder, has the short yardage conversion down on the goal line for a touchdown. Looked like he was going to make some magic happen on this final play. And Mike about had me pulling my hair out here with this end of game sequence where Chicago turns it over on downs. You get a chance to the ball back. Quinn laces a ball in a tight window to Ollie Gordon for a catch and run. And then you turn it over on downs and Quinn takes a sack and then you get the ball back because Chicago just run it out, right? And then you get it back with like 5 seconds left and you run 2 plays. But Ollie Gordon, I digress. Looking real good. Speaking of the running backs, here's thinking of Alexander Mattison, hoping he's okay. With obviously him getting banged up, looking like he landed on his head. I wouldn't know because Chicago was too busy interviewing somebody on the sideline instead of talking about the player that was down and injured on the field. So I didn't get a great peek at it. Young guys on the defensive side of the ball. I think you could start this conversation with some of the guys up front. I didn't think either Kenneth Grant or Jordan Phillips were consistently dominant in the way that you want them to look when they're going to reach their peak and pinnacle. You'd expect that for their first sampling of NFL play. But Grant with some of the retrace stuff where they're running screens and he's getting out, he's getting 5-6 yards downfield outside the numbers, chasing ball carriers down. That was what really was his hallmark resume play at Michigan. And I thought it was relevant again today for making a couple of plays and had some good knockback as well. Jordan Phillips had a goal line stuff where he gets double teamed and he kind of has his shoulders raised up, but because he's so low to the ground, he's able to disengage off of that and he squares up the running back. There was a couple of times where the pile with the running back with momentum goes into Jordan Phillips and the gravitational pull of him as a player, like when the contact happens, didn't get off of it very easy. Was it always super consistent? No, there were a few times where he got stretched laterally and it looked like there were some cutback lanes that came off of that. Do you want those things cleaned up? But I think for what you expect both of those players and their skill sets to look like, you got a good sampling of it here in the first preseason contest against the Chicago Bears. I thought it was a bummer that Derek McClendon got popped for the roughing the passer call. And same for Eugene Asante on the unnecessary roughness call where the receiver is leaning and going down to try to make the catch and the strike zone changes in a split second and he catches him up in the upper shoulder, head, neck area, but it's still a body shot and gets flagged for 15 on what would be a touchdown drive for Chicago. I thought that was a bummer because I think Asante really flew around out there. Derek McClendon was getting after it as a pass rusher. I know I wrote this for A to Z Sports and the beginning of the weekend. But Mike McDaniel said Mohamed Kamara in concussion protocol suffered on their travel day, didn't travel with the team to Chicago, obviously in concussion protocol now. The last thing Mohamed Kamara can start to afford to is seeing guys like Derek McClendon play like this in the preseason game. Because he big time presence. I thought McClendon played better than Grayson Murphy, where I know Grayson Murphy had a sack, but there was some effort stuff away from the ball and the pursuit level there and the finish ability. I thought McClendon, of all of your non-top 4 edge guys, I thought Cameron Good had a really nice play on special teams, but Derek McClendon was the one who I thought was the most persistent and disruptive player of the group. You obviously had an interception. It was cool to see somebody get an interception off a tip ball because I don't think the Dolphins got a single one of those last year. That's also neither here nor there. Ethan Bonner with the contest at the catch point. Patrick McMorris off the deflection, that closing down the first half was nice to see. And then you had Isaiah Johnson in sticky man coverage, doing just enough to get his eyes back and break the hearts of all of the Bears fans at Soldier Field who were hoping for a DPI there in the end game sequence where they took the shot on 4th down. And Johnson gets his eyes back and keeps his hands off the receiver. I thought it was well played for, oh, shoot, it's underthrown ball. You see a lot of DPIs in that situation because the receiver stops and then the DB runs into him and impedes his ability to catch the ball. So I thought that was nicely done by Isaiah Johnson in that sequence as well. Some odds and ends with this tie between Chicago and Miami. That's coming our way next here on Locked on Dolphins. Make sure you guys stick with us. Listen, we've all been there. You log on early, wait forever for concert tickets. You're sitting in the virtual line. It's about to go on sale. And then for whatever reason, you lose your spot. You don't get those tickets for that show you've been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories, not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping. That's where Game Time comes in. Game Time makes getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever before. Prices eventually drop as you get closer to showtime, and you can save up to 60% off with their killer last-minute deals. I love their all-in pricing, so there's no surprise fees. Like you see the price, and then you click it, and it goes in your cart. And you go to your cart, and magically you have the price of another ticket waiting for you. Game Time takes that guesswork out for you, and they give you panoramic views so you can see the sight lines before you commit to tickets. Take the guesswork out of buying concert and show tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets with the lowest prices guaranteed. I don't want to overreact. I really don't. But special teams was pretty good. Special teams got me fired up. Some numbers off the special teams. Miami returned 3 kickoffs and averaged 38.7 yards per return against Chicago. That in contrast to Chicago. Chicago also returned 3 kickoffs, averaged 21.7. Miami averaged nearly twice as many yards per kickoff return than the Bears did. Miami's average starting field position on drives when attempting a kickoff return was the 44-yard line, their own 44-yard line. They started on average when returning a kick at the 44. Chicago averaged their own 23. And if it wasn't for Jason Sanders with the illegal procedure on the one kickoff that they had that didn't land in the landing zone, that was a touchback and came out to the 40, Miami would have been, I don't want to say perfect, but the kicking sequence and the hidden advantages in the game as far as starting field positions and net yards on returns to set up your offense and your defense and playing complementary football really stood out to me in a big way. And I thought, again, I'm going to dump on the Bears broadcast here, but they're backed all the way up and the Gunners get bench pressed to the moon and the punter bombs it on a line without a lot of hang time, and it sets up these huge returns. On punt returns, the Dolphins averaged 17.5 yards per return on 2 punt returns. So they averaged 38.7 per kick return and 17.5 per punt return. And the Gunners did a good job. They were physical. The returners did a good job to kind of find some creases, You had kickoff returns that hit downhill. You had kickoff returns that hit outside. You have kickoff returns that made a guy miss. I thought the execution on special teams was outstanding. And when's the last time you could say that about a Miami Dolphins football team? Right? And it wasn't all good, right? But even like Miami, whether it was Stonehouse or it was Bailey, I thought the appropriate amount of air was put on the ball to allow the kick team to get downfield. I mean, the one where they were backed all the way up inside their own 10-yard line and Chicago got it, and it was like a net 47-yarder or something like that. But that ball hung up there what felt like forever. And when they boomed it, it also hung up as compared to a lot of Chicago's were on a line, and it set the Dolphins return guys up for really favorable opportunities. So I thought that stood out to me in a big way. I want to talk a little bit about Quinn Ewers, who you want to be fair to Quinn, right? Based off of 7th round draft choice. I know some people thought he got woefully underdrafted, but I thought it was appropriate with what he looked like on film from an X's and O's and an execution of the offense perspective. And then there's some people that are just never Tua Tagovailoa people that are just convinced that Quinn Ewers needs to be the next franchise quarterback of the Dolphins because his name's not Tua Tagovailoa. He's not a left-handed quarterback that doesn't have the strongest arm in the world. It's not a big arm player. I get it, right? Like, but I think it was a sobering experience for Quinn as far as he started rough and then he kind of settled in, but he didn't get a lot of help from the guys. And I'm not going to sit here and hammer on the box score, right? Because he went 5 of 18. I think he started 0 for 5. He took 2 sacks. He had 2 fumbles and lost them both. One was at the very end game sequence where before Chicago had the 4 and out. And the other one was backed up inside your own 5-yard line where you have a promising run from Madison, but then you take a penalty and then you go back and you're backed up and then you get a nice run to kind of get you out of the shadow of your own goalpost, but you're still way backed up. And then you get outside the pocket and you get stripped from behind and you lose the ball because you're carrying it low. And I think it just kind of, the arm talent's evident, but let's pump the brakes here about how good Quinn Ewers looks in practice. You know, we need to see obviously big time exponential leaps and bounds of the execution of the offense where the timing is the paramount thing. And that's a separate conversation than what the ceiling is when you run a timing-oriented offense, right? Those are two totally different things. Right now, it's a timing-oriented offense, which means if you're going to try to hit the top of the drop, hitch up into the pocket, and then slide with 3 like open strides to your right, and then try to rear up and hit the glance, it's going to be 3 yards behind the break, and it's going to hit the defender in the hip, where thank good he didn't have his eyes on the quarterback, or else he would have thrown an interception. Right. Now, I thought the touch throw that was with 5 seconds left, the touch throw that he had down the sideline that he dropped right in the bucket, that was a great throw. The 3rd and 15 that he laced to Ollie Gordon in a tight window was a great throw. But the first throw that he had was just a routine out, and he airmailed this thing and put his receiver in a really bad spot to try to adjust the ball. So I know there's been a lot of gas on Quinn Ewers, and he looks good, and he's got the wow throws. I think you saw the good, the bad, and the ugly all with Quinn Ewers in one shot. Other players that got banged up throughout the course of this game, we did have, as we mentioned, Elijah Campbell. We had Alexander Madison. The Dolphins chose to protect a handful of notable players: Jalen Phillips, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Tua Tagovailoa with a brief cameo appearance. But the Dolphins, all in all, I think there's a lot of nice things to build on. There's some of the same questions that you had. I would like to think this kind of alleviated some of the, wow, they came out and punched you in the mouth questions. I think that was just kind of an expectations versus reality of a joint practice with a team that coming into practice was operating on a different intensity level, and the Dolphins had to adjust. And as we heard from Teron Armstead last night on The Set, if you're not subscribed to Teron on YouTube, cannot recommend it enough. Teron kind of went in on, look, there's a kind of a standard procedure for joint practices. It became apparent throughout the first half of practice that the Bears didn't care, right? They were taking guys to the ground. They were playing intense. They were really hitting. And that's what the Jordan Brooks, Tyrell Dotson dust up was about. Jordan Brooks as a leader saying, no, man, listen, like, they want to be about that life and they want to hit and they want to go full, then we may have been told, like, look, you're supposed to two-hand touch and you're supposed to thud and you're supposed to tag off and not tackle. But if they're going to play that way, then let's play that way. And Jordan Brooks, like, lighting a fire under guys. And I really appreciated that insight from Teron Armstead, because I know one of the things I said from the jump was I don't want to overreact to a dust-up between two players until I know more context about it. And Teron Armstead was there, so he gave us that firsthand account. The Dolphins from here on to Detroit. They are off tomorrow. They have their own practice on Tuesday, and then they have joint practices with Detroit on Wednesday and Thursday. We'll wait to kind of hear what the status is for some of the players coming out of the game. But that is going to do it for us here on the show, Kyle Krabs. Appreciate you guys for checking out the post-game. Dolphins 24, Bears 24, tie in the Windy City. Hope you guys will hit subscribe on the channel. Come back, see us again soon. That's it for me. I'm out of here. Go Fins.